The road to Dead Air Lane was a ribbon of cracked asphalt that seemed to stretch longer than it should have, like distance itself was bending. My rental car's headlights caught nothing but drifting fog, yet the GPS swore I was nearly there. The old radio station, WTXR, had been off air for over 30 years. But tonight, according to a report from a ham radio operator, it was broadcasting again. Static at first, then a voice repeating my name. Fog swallowed the car as I slowed to a crawl. A sign appeared in the beams, flaking paint, leaning sideways, the letters barely visible. Dead Air Lane. The name wasn't official. Locals gave it that title after the station went silent in '92. They say the night it stopped broadcasting, every clock in town froze at 11:59 p.m. I killed the engine. For a moment, silence pressed in. No crickets, no wind. Just the sound of my own breathing inside the cabin. Then faint and impossible. A crackle from the car radio, even though it was switched off. I reached toward the dial, half expecting it to be warm from use. Instead it was icy. And then, through the static, I heard it. Terrian, drum, low, and distant. The voice was swallowed by the hiss, but it didn't sound recorded. It sounded live. The station itself emerged from the fog. A squat concrete building with a single rusted tower glowing at the night sky. Windows were black, no reflection, no glint of glass. The place looked more like a bunker than a broadcasting hub. I stepped out into the damp night. The air had that metallic tang of rain that never came. Gravel crunched under my boots. Every step toward the entrance felt heavier, as if the air was thickening. The main door hung crooked on one hinge. My flashlight beam slid over peeling paint, faded call letters, and a sticker from the early '90s that read, "Stay tuned." The lock had been smashed decades ago. Inside, the darkness felt alive. Not just absence of light, but presence of something else. Dust motes floated in the beam like tiny suspended worlds. The first hallway was narrow, lined with warped wood paneling. Somewhere deeper inside, I swore I heard a faint hum. I raised my camera, speaking into the mic. Chamber of Echoes investigation, WTXR radio station, reported ghost signal broadcasting after 30 years of silence. Entering the main hall now. The hum grew louder as I advanced. An electrical tone, not quite constant, almost breathing. I passed a door labeled Studio B in peeling white letters. The handle was slick with condensation, even though the air was bone dry. A framed photograph hung crooked on the wall. Black and white, a group of smiling DJs from the station's early years. Their names were typed neatly below, but the last photo on the right had no name. The man in it wasn't smiling. His eyes were locked dead ahead. At me. I shook it off and moved deeper in. Wires dangled from the ceiling, some sparking faintly. My EMF reader was dead. Just a blank screen. But the static in my ears was growing louder. It wasn't coming from the hallway. It was in me. Finally, I reached the source of the hum, the main control room door. It was heavy steel, painted a sickly shade of green. A sign above it read, "Authorized personnel only," in faded red letters. The door was sealed with an old chain. But the chain was loose, like someone had unlocked it just before I arrived. I pushed it open. The room beyond was swallowed in shadow, but I could make out the silhouette of an ancient mixing console, the kind with 1,000 dials and sliders. Every light on the board was dead, except one. A single red on-air bulb glowed in the corner, faint but steady. And then, the voice came back. Not from the speakers, not from my radio. From everywhere. "Welcome back, Terrian. We've been waiting." The red light pulsed once, and the control room door slammed shut behind me. The slam echoed through the control room like a gunshot, bouncing off dead equipment and glassless windows. My flashlight wobbled in my grip. beam jittering over rows of dusty dials and cracked microphones. Somewhere in the static-laced air, I thought I heard a whisper too faint to make out. I tried the door handle. It didn't budge. My pulse was hammering now, and I could taste copper on my tongue. The smell in the room shifted, ozone like before a lightning strike, mixed with something older. Something sour, as if the air itself had been sealed for decades. The on-air light flickered once. Then the mixing console, dark seconds ago, began to come alive. Rows of meters twitched to life. Sliders shifted on their own, smooth and deliberate, as though guided by invisible hands. The largest dial in the center slowly rotated to the right. Speakers hissed. The hum I'd heard earlier bled through, deeper now, layered with faint rhythmic tapping. It almost sounded like Morse code, but slower. I hit record on my camera and stepped closer to the console. My reflection in the cracked glass of the soundproof booth looked wrong, slightly delayed, like it was moving a fraction of a second after I did. The tapping stopped. Silence. Then, without warning, a burst of pure static roared through the room, rattling the glass. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the noise was inside my skull as much as in the air. And then, underneath the static, a voice. Mail, low, urgent. Channel 7, tonight, 11:59. It repeated twice, then cut out completely, leaving only my own ragged breathing. I knew Channel 7 wasn't a TV station anymore. It was an unused frequency, banned after the incident in '92. The exact same night WTXR went dark. The official story claimed it was a technical glitch. Locals said something came through the broadcast, something that wasn't meant for us. I moved to the sound booth, stepping over old reel-to-reel tapes scattered on the floor. Some were warped from heat, others labeled in smeared ink. Dead air, don't play this. Test signal 4. Inside the booth, a single chair sat before a microphone suspended by rusted springs. The mic cable ran not into the console, but through a hole in the floor, disappearing into darkness below. The chair shifted slightly, though I hadn't touched it. Then the mic swung toward me, slow and deliberate, stopping an inch from my lips. My flashlight dimmed. I swallowed hard, leaning forward. Who's there? My own voice came back through the speakers half a second later, but pitched lower, distorted and carrying a second voice behind it, speaking in a language I didn't know. The air around me thickened. I could feel pressure in my ears, like deep underwater. The voice in the distortion grew louder, layered over mine until mine was gone completely. It said something in English this time. Stay for the broadcast. Then the booth lights died, plunging me into darkness lit only by the faint red glow of the on-air bulb outside. I stumbled back into the control room, but the layout had changed. The door was gone. Where it had been was now another wall lined with dead monitors. On one screen, faint green letters typed themselves out in an old terminal font. Welcome back. The words flickered. You left us in dead air. My skin crawled. Every instinct screamed to get out, but there was nowhere to go. The monitors changed again, now showing a grainy black and white video feed of the station exterior. But in the footage, the fog outside was gone, replaced by complete blackness. And standing in that blackness were silhouettes, dozens of them. They didn't move, didn't blink, just stood facing the building as though waiting for a cue. The speakers hissed and the urgent male voice returned, louder now. 11:59. Tune in, or they'll come inside. The on-air bulb dimmed, then flared so bright it painted the walls in blood-red light. And somewhere far below the building, something heavy began to move. The rumble from below vibrated through the solace of my boots, shaking dust from the ceiling. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, gears groaned, like something ancient being forced awake after decades of stillness. I searched the control room. fingers running over cracked veneer and rusted panels, until I found a square outline in the floor hidden under a mat of cables. A trapdoor, padlocked with a chain stiff from corrosion. The lock gave way with a single twist, not because I was strong, but because the metal crumbled under my hand, flaking away like dried leaves. The chain slid free and the hatch popped open, exhaling a breath of air that smelled like burned plastic and wet soil. I aimed my flashlight into the opening. A narrow iron staircase spiraled down into darkness, its steps so thin I could see them bending under my weight before I even took the first one. The sound of the rumbling grew louder as I descended, mixing with a faint electrical buzz. Every third step had patches of rust the size of my palm, and the railing was slick, forcing me to keep my balance with one hand while filming with the other. At the bottom, I entered a low corridor lined with thick copper cables running along the walls. Every few feet, an old industrial bulb hung from the ceiling, glowing a dim, sickly yellow, too weak to see far ahead, but enough to make shadows writhe on the walls. The corridor ended in a steel door painted with a warning in faded red. Do not transmit. Below it, someone had scratched a crude drawing into the metal, a circle with jagged lines radiating outward like a sun made of teeth. My flashlight flickered as I pushed the door. The hinges screamed, and the moment it opened, the buzzing sound surged into a high-pitched whine, drilling straight into my skull. Inside was a cavernous chamber filled with shelves of reel-to-reel recorders, all spinning in perfect sync despite having no visible power source. Tape unspooled from one, floating in the air like it was caught in invisible water, drifting toward a console in the center of the room. The console was massive, part broadcast desk, part altar, covered in switches and levers. And in the middle was a single dial labeled transmit that was already set halfway. I heard footsteps behind me and spun around, but the corridor was empty. The sound didn't stop though. It circled the room, quick and deliberate, but with no visible source. One of the reels stopped mid-spin. The tape inside jerked taut, and a voice, the same urgent mail from before, erupted from the speakers overhead. They re-listening. Don't turn it. I froze. But then another voice, softer and much closer, whispered right next to my ear. Turn it all the way. Set them free. The air where the whisper came from was cold enough to sting. I reached for the dial, torn between two impossible choices. The lights overhead flickered, and for a split second I saw shapes hanging from the ceiling. Not lights, but headsets, hundreds of them, swaying gently like pendulums. The buzzing became a chorus of layered voices, overlapping in every direction. Some pleading, some laughing, some screaming. The sound was suffocating, but beneath it all, I could hear my own name being spoken in perfect clarity. The dial twitched on its own, moving one notch higher. The walls shuddered, and the floor beneath me pulsed as though the building itself had a heartbeat. On the far side of the room, I saw a second door, smaller, reinforced with rivets, and sealed with a chain far heavier than the one upstairs. Every instinct told me that whatever was behind that door was what the dial controlled. As I stepped toward it, the reel-to-reel recorders began to play in reverse. The voices turned guttural, like they were choking on the words. My camera screen glitched, frames skipping, warping the walls into impossible angles. The urgent male voice returned, louder than ever. If you open that door, you'll never make it to midnight. And for the first time, I could hear fear in his tone. I stood frozen, one hand on the chain, the other on the camera, my mind split between curiosity and survival. The heartbeat under the floor grew stronger, and I realized it wasn't the building's pulse. Something was knocking from the other side. The knocks from behind the riveted door were rhythmic now, 3 slow, deliberate beats, followed by silence. The air pressed down heavier with each one, like the sound carried weight. The chain was icy under my fingers, colder than metal should be in an enclosed room. Frost formed where I touched it, threading outward like veins in broken glass. From the broadcast console, the transmit dial moved another notch on its own. This time, the shift wasn't mechanical. It jerked, like someone had grabbed it violently. The hum in the room deepened to a vibration I could feel in my teeth. A single reel-to-reel machine stopped, the tape inside spinning slack, then slowly feeding backward through the head. The voice that emerged was female, low, urgent, and full of static. At midnight, it walks. I checked my watch. 11:42 p.m. My pulse quickened, the seconds ticking louder in my head than the actual sounds in the room. The lights dimmed until the room was lit only by the faint glow of the console. The shapes above me, the hundreds of dangling headsets, descended, swaying closer, cords stretching taut. One headset dropped directly in front of my face. The earpieces were frayed, but through them I could hear whispers so soft they felt like they were inside my skull. Put it on, or they'll find you anyway. I didn't move, but the headset tilted on its cord like a pendulum, swinging until one cracked earpiece brushed my cheek. The cold from it bit into my skin. Behind the riveted door, the knocking stopped. The silence was worse. It was too complete, like the air itself had been vacuumed away. Then a slow scraping sound began, metal against metal. Something was dragging its nails across the inside of the door, tracing every rivet, every seam. The chain jerked suddenly, hard enough to rattle the hinges. I stepped back, my flashlight catching motion, not from the door, but from the shadow beneath it. It stretched out across the floor, toward me. I tried to move, but the shadow moved faster, reaching my boots, climbing my legs like liquid darkness. My camera's night mode flickered, framing the black mass with a sickly green haze. Every reel in the room spun at once, each playing a different voice. They overlapped into a single horrible chorus. Open it. Open IT. The transmit dial slid the rest of the way on its own. The moment it clicked into place, the steel door didn't just open, it exploded outward. The chain snapped like thread, the blast of cold air knocking me back against the console. From the doorway, fog poured into the room, thick and oily. Shapes moved inside it, silhouettes that shifted too quickly to focus on. Some looked human, some didn't, then one stepped forward. Tall, draped in black cloth that trailed on the floor. Its head was wrapped in wires, the ends sparking faintly. Where its face should have been was a speaker grill, and from it came the same female voice, Midnight Q. I stumbled backward, tripping over a coil of tape on the floor. The figure kept moving toward me, the static from its face growing louder with every step. The dangling headsets swayed violently now, their cords wrapping around each other like snakes. Some cords reached down, brushing the fog, absorbing it until the earpieces pulsed faintly with light. The figure stopped in front of the console, placing one long, blackened hand on the transmit dial. The tape reel stopped spinning, and amid absolute silence, the voice spoke again, clearer this time. We are the last broadcast, and you're part of it now. The console's bulbs flared bright white, blinding me. I heard my own voice, not live, but recorded, playing from every machine in the room, narrating exactly what I was seeing in that moment. And then nothing. Just the sound of breathing that wasn't mine. When the light faded, I was lying on cracked asphalt under a sky the color of burnt paper. The broadcast station was gone. In its place stood a rusted water tower, tilting like it might collapse at any second. I tried to convince myself I'd passed out, hallucinated everything, but my camera was still in my hands. Its battery read 0%, yet the red rec light was glowing. Playback started on its own. My screen showed footage of me, right now, lying on the asphalt, looking at the camera. Only. In the recording, I wasn't breathing. The faintest static filled the air. It wasn't coming from my camera. It was everywhere, like the atmosphere itself was an old detuned radio. The sound grew sharper, forming words. They were my words from my own videos. This is Terrian. And tonight we go where no one dares. Hearing myself in that empty place was like hearing someone use my name in a nightmare. I looked around, no buildings, no lights, just the road stretching both ways into blackness. But there was a single lamppost ahead, its bulb flickering in the fog. As I approached, I saw something hanging from the lamppost, a headset identical to the ones in the station. Its cord ran upward, disappearing into the fog. The ear pads were damp. Against my better judgment, I lifted them closer. The moment they touched my ear, a voice hissed through. "You left the door open, Terrian? It's not inside anymore." The fog thickened instantly, rolling in so fast I could barely see my own hands. Somewhere in it, footsteps began, slow, steady, and far too heavy to be human. I started walking fast, then running, but the sound followed. Every few steps, the static in the air would spike, distorting my vision for a split second, and in those glitches, I saw it. The figure from the station, keeping perfect pace. My camera jerked in my grip, like it was being pulled forward. On its cracked display, I saw street signs flash past, signs for towns I'd never heard of. The names were wrong, as if the letters had been rearranged. The static became unbearable. I dropped the camera, but instead of hitting the ground, it froze midair, suspended like it was caught in invisible strings. The headset cords snapped upward violently, disappearing into the fog above. Then, one by one, more cords descended around me, each with a headset dangling at ear level. Every headset played a different version of my voice, narrating horrors I hadn't experienced yet, accidents, hauntings, disappearances. In some of them, I was already dead. I backed into something solid. My stomach dropped as I realized it was the riveted steel door from the station, standing upright in the middle of the road. No walls, just the door. The shadows seeped from underneath again, spreading in all directions. In the static, a deep mechanical voice joined the others. "Broadcast never ends. You are the signal now." The door swung open, but instead of darkness, I saw my own apartment inside. The light was on. My editing desk was exactly as I'd left it. I stepped forward cautiously. The moment I crossed the threshold, the steel slammed shut behind me. My apartment was silent, but my computer screen was on, playing back footage of the station, from angles I'd never filmed. I reached for the mouse, but the cursor moved on its own, dragging the video into a timeline. When it played, the speakers emitted that same low hum from the console. From my bathroom came a faint drip, drip, drip. The sound layered with the hum until it almost became a voice whispering just under the surface. "Look behind you." I turned slowly. Every wall of my apartment was now lined with headsets, cords trailing to nowhere. All of them began playing at once, a perfect recreation of the moment the door blew open. My reflection in the black screen of my TV wasn't moving in sync with me. It was smiling. The TV clicked on by itself, showing me, not here, but back in the broadcast station, sitting at the console, speaking into the mic. My voice was calm, measured, and that concludes tonight's signal. Until next time. Behind my reflection in the footage, the tall figure stood, its speaker-grilled face aimed at the camera. In the static hiss, I swore I heard my own voice saying, "Don't turn it off." Every light in my apartment cut out at once. In the dark, a single red record light glowed from somewhere just over my shoulder, and the last thing I heard was the sound of the transmit dial clicking into place.